20 minutes before 7. Thanks for watching Morning Live. Now, the South African Communist Party, or the SACP, celebrated its 99th anniversary yesterday and used the occasion to send a strong message against corruption and looting of state funds. Dr. Blade Nzimande, the General-Secretary of the SACP, said that the party is unhappy about the loan from the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, and that it is an immense error as it places the country in more debt. He also added that this loan exposes South Africa's economy to imperialist interests. And joining us now to discuss this further is Dr. Alex Mashilo, the national spokesperson of the SACP. Good morning, Dr. Mashilo. Thanks for speaking to us, and happy anniversary to the SACP.
Good morning, Sakina and the viewers, and thank you very much for having us.
So let's start with the SACP's dissatisfaction about the IMF loan and also the statement that this, in essence, exposes the economy to imperialist interests. Please explain that further.
On the African continent, since Ghana gained independence, one by one, the countries that followed later went to the IMF. When they arrived there for balance of payments crisis loans, the IMF gave them structural adjustment program. Once you accept those structural adjustment programs, democracy is over. What do we mean by that? Both the government and the people will no longer have a say on economic policy direction. From that moment, dictatorship kicks in. That is what has happened in this continent. Many dictatorships, including in Zimbabwe, by the way, are attributed to individuals. They are disconnected to IMF and World Bank loans, which came with structural adjustment programs, while those loans contributed to the death of democracy in those countries. We don't want that as the SACP in South Africa.
Well, you say you don't want that. We have that because the loan has been approved. So where does that leave us in terms of being a democratic state?
The loan was approved under the IMF Rapid Finance Facility, which is referred to as the low-cost finance facility. It is not coming with structural adjustment programs. But what we do not like is what the National Treasury has done, taking economic policies that were released in this country without consultation and that have not been agreed to and attaching them to that loan. That means that if the National Treasury continues with those neoliberal structural programs, we're definitely going to have to meet on the streets.
So just with regard to that, these structural adjustment programs that would come as condition, have you seen the terms and conditions with which that loan actually comes as the SACP?
We discussed this matter in April, May, and June in the Alliance, at the level of the Alliance Political Council. What came out before then was this said that the loan is not coming with interest rate. And we said no, insofar as we have done our own review of IMF financing facilities, this loan will come with interest rates. That forced us in April to release a red alert doing a review of this facility. At the end of the day, the Alliance Political Council authored a document and released it. In that document, we made it clear that one, no international financing that comes with strings attached must be accepted. No international financing that will undermine our hard-won democracy must be accepted. No international financing that will interfere in our policy space must be accepted. And we ended it at that particular level. When the IMF released, the National Treasury released its statement welcoming the loan, they said that South Africans must be content that the National Treasury negotiated a good deal. What we are uncomfortable with is that the terms have not been opened for all South Africans to verify for themselves. If the deal is good, indeed it must be opened in terms of the principles of transparency, which principles govern democracy, for all of us to verify. Lastly, what is worrying is that you cannot have a national treasury that always complains about the debt to GDP ratio, leaving the country to accumulate foreign currency denominated debt. Remember that 1% of a dollar is completely not the same or is completely not equal to 1% of a rand. You are talking about 1% of 17 rand.
So in other words, Dr. Mashilo, you haven't seen those conditions yourself as yet as the SACP.
We have not seen the conditions except the letter that the National Treasury released. And what angered us more is that that letter refers to structural reforms, which in our view are neoliberal structural reforms, and we have not agreed to those reforms in the alliance, and we are still looking forward to engagement.
So nobody seems to have seen this, but nonetheless, this is the situation as we all wait to see what those conditions are. Having said that, though, Dr. Mashilo, how many members of cabinet are members of the SACP? Because this was a cabinet decision, after all, that decided to go this route of the IMF.
Thank you very much for asking that question, because it has been repeated quite often. I'm sure you know the number of ministers that the cabinet has. The SACP Central Committee has only 2 members of the cabinet out of the total.
And those would be Dr. Blade Nzimande and Mrs. Stella Ndabeni-Abrams.
The Minister of... No, it will be Dr. Blade Nzimande and Comrade Thulas Nxesi, who are members of the Central Committee of the party. However, they are not allowed, in terms of their oath of office, to share cabinet information with us, to even tell us who said what during discussions in the cabinet.
So what does that mean for your alliance? As members of the tripartite alliance, if you are not taken into confidence with something as important as this, what does that say about your position in that alliance?
The advantage about the alliance is that it's an alliance of independent formations. Where we differ or disagree, we will engage. If the engagements do not work out, like it happened under GEAR, we meet on the street until a change occurs.
Yeah, but if we go back to GEAR, you were vehemently opposed to GEAR, but it went ahead without your blessing anyway. And as you say, even right now, we look at what's happening with the VBS saga, the reinstatement of Danny Msiza and Florence Radzilana. Again, the SACP vehemently opposes that. The ANC goes ahead anyway. So it would seem as though you are very strategic to the ANC in certain ways, but they don't seem to listen to you very much.
Look, you go back to GEAR, remember that it brought about things like privatization. We fought against those until they stopped. Not everything in GEAR managed to go ahead because of the mass mobilization we engaged in. On VBS, again, we are vehemently opposed to that. Conducting a struggle is not an event. It is a process. We are sure that if we keep on pushing forward, at the end of the day, the people will win. There is no way the people will not win if united. We have to mobilize until there is a moment of victory and change.
But when is that going to happen? Dr. Blade Nzimande yesterday during that address spoke about the plague of corruption in government, and we see it playing out now. And he said that now is the time to intensify the struggle against the tenderization of the state. He also spoke about COVID-preneurs. What does the party suggest be done right now with regard to what is going on? Never mind what's gone before, just looking at how you address the issues going on with regard to corruption right now.
Remember, Sakina, when we were the first to come out to say that there is what we called corporate capture, in full corporate state capture, later summarized in shorthand state capture. This was rejected, and it was rejected from within the ANC. If you will recall, it was even the ANC president who mobilized at time to say that there was no state capture. We exercised our independence until such time that the whole of South Africa came on board to say that there was state capture. When we called for the Commission of Inquiry into state capture, again it was rejected, in fact, by all parliamentary opposition parties, until the former public protector reached the same conclusion as the SACP. Again, we pursued that call until such time that the commission was implemented. What is very important is that we do not achieve victories or successes or advances only through a word of mouth. It is important for our people to realize that in the same way as we dislodged the apartheid regime, even now under conditions of democracy, if we believe that something is wrong, we again have to mobilize until we become victorious. This is what we have to do against the COVID premiers and all other corrupt elements.
And how exactly do you plan on doing that? If you're fighting from within, again, you seem to be fighting a losing battle, because we've heard all these outcries from the SACP before. If we look at, and just going through that number of cabinet ministers who are members of the SACP, it would seem that members who were firmly communist members before have now gone in on an ANC ticket. Are you losing that battle as well in terms of managing to keep people within and on the SACP trajectory?
Remember that the cabinet is a cabinet of an ANC-led government in the context of an ANC-led alliance. We do not discriminate against our ANC comrades. We all have the responsibility to place South Africa on a right path. But there are rotten elements who steal public resources. We have to take them head on. And as we have seen in the battle against state capture, we did win a significant number of ANC progressive to a point where the entire ANC now was supporting that call. We should not say because we said something through the word of mouth, we will win people. We have to mobilize, and we must mobilize across the board in the interest of the success of our democracy. Until such time that we achieve victory, we have got to persist. This is a process of struggle. It is not a process where you say something and it is accepted. Take, for instance, if you say to someone who benefits from tenderization of the state, if you talk to a COVID premier, and say that these tenders are destroying the ANC and will destroy the ANC from power, that person will not be prepared to listen, because that's how that person is accumulating wealth. So the only way you can make that person listen is to conduct a struggle against that person.
And a struggle that ultimately results in what form of a discipline or punitive action, Mr. Mashilo? And I ask this because you spoke about the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, more than 700 million rand later. And this is not even taking into account all the other independent commissions of inquiry that were conducted on all of the matters being ventilated before that commission right now. So we're easily talking way over R1 billion that's already been spent in state funds. To what end? Who has been arrested? Who has been found guilty?
The president has signed a proclamation for the use of the evidence gathered from the Commission of Inquiry on State Capture. We are looking forward to the Directorate for Priority Crime to using that evidence. We are looking forward to the National Prosecuting Authority and the investigative unit in that authority beginning prosecutions making use of that evidence. We still have to push, Sakina. The struggle is not over. That's what we mean when we say the struggle is not over. even if it means conducting the struggle against your former comrades who have become corrupt elements. You have got to push until such time that they are prosecuted and sentenced to jail to wear orange overalls.
But signing a proclamation is no guarantee that this will actually fast-track the process in any way, shape or form. There have been proclamations signed on the SABC, for example, under President Jacob Zuma, proclamations signed around Eskom, and so many other proclamations have been signed previously. The question can also be asked, why didn't the president sign that proclamation earlier? Why only lately? So that is no guarantee that we will actually see any sort of movement in fast-tracking the address of corruption.
Remember that we embarked on action to address your question before you asked it. We marched to the offices of the National Prosecuting Authority long before the president signed the proclamation. And we said, please, don't wait for the commission to conclude its work. Begin prosecution. The National Director of Public Prosecution said we should allow her quality time to study the evidence because they do not want to embark on a prosecution that will fail. We took their word for it, and when the president signed that proclamation, we were happy. One other thing is to distinguish between the previous proclamations and this current one. The previous proclamations were mere SIU proclamations. This one is a proclamation for the use of the evidence already gathered at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture into prosecuting those who are implicated.
So just another warning issued by the SACP, sending out a stern warning that the governing party should be wary of self-destructing, and said that it cannot be held a hostage by a few associated with greedy factions in the movement. Who exactly is the SACP referring to?
Look, that call is linked directly to what we called the tenderization of the state. Breaking down the state into tenders or converting state-society relations into tenders. And a few individuals using that as a basis to enrich themselves. And when we say, comrades, this cannot be the way to go, and they come around and say that we are opposed to BEE. Hang on. Since 1994, millions of black people in this country remain impoverished. What we need is an economic policy that addresses their conditions of high levels of inequality, poverty, unemployment, unequal development. Not a policy dedicated at a few individuals in the name of all of us as black people.
But the SACP has failed. You have failed to get the ANC to espouse what you are saying right now as the SACP. So I have to ask you, at what point do you decide to go it alone?
We will never go it alone, Sakina. Please take your pen and write this down. The reason why we will never go it alone is because we are not a party only of our members and leaders. We are a party of the working class. Every step we take must be with and for the working class. It cannot be a step for our members and our leaders. So when we go, it must be because we are going with the entire working class, moving together, marching forward towards socialism.
Well, we're out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Alex Mashilo, a national spokesperson of the South African Communist Party, talking to us about the organization's unhappiness about the IMF loan, as well as the corruption related to the state issuing tenders and contracts. The party also celebrating its 99th anniversary. With that, 7 o'clock it is. Time for the latest news with Leanne.